Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 151. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Hopefully everyone had a happy and safe and fantastic 4th of July. Dave, hopefully you did as well. I'm sure you were shooting off Roman candles all over the house, right?
Not like the old days, boy. Boy, times have changed. I'm that guy that complains about the people doing that now, whereas I used to be the kid that used to do that. But obviously, living in Las Vegas, they have a lot of fireworks celebrations that really don't get started until about 8:30 at night. So, but luckily, I have a dog that's real good with that, doesn't get worked up and all like that. So just had to put up with the noise a little bit up until midnight overall. But yeah, not bad. Had some traditional fare yesterday. Had some burgers and some tater tots, and yeah, just made for a nice quiet day overall. Up until tonight.
Yeah, sure. Before we get into the Steelers stuff, we'll talk about Arthur Smith today. You did a great play action study with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, got some commentary on Alex Highsmith, and continuing to go through your 90 and 30 Steelers training camp preview series. Let me ask you something, Dave, just kind of unrelated, but maybe to me minorly related to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aside from like doing depot stuff, are you a procrastinator in your other parts of your life? I actually have no idea if you are, or just someone who's always on top of like things you have to do outside of like direct football stuff.
No, I'm not good on. I have to make lists, and sometimes my wife has to get on me to knock out small details. I have. Since we moved, here we go.
Here we go. I sent you that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, since we moved from Florida, back 8-9 years ago, and specifically once we downsized from our bigger house, I was starting to get kind of worked up. You get to a certain age, you got so much stuff, and you need a bigger house to put in that stuff. Well, I was starting to get kind of panic attacks having so much stuff. So it was actually a good thing when we downsized when we did, and we did so purposefully, because there've been too much stuff to haul out west to Las Vegas, and obviously got out of here, and then got a new house out here, and that kind of thing. I'm real cognizant now of, I'm not a real big hoarder of things anymore. I try to keep my possessions to a limited amount now at this point. So I'm constantly kind of looking at what, like I built up several books that just sit there, weren't going to read anymore, and all like that. We have a library across the street or real close to us, and took a bunch of them over to the library. So I'm constantly just trying to make sure I don't have a lot of stuff.
Sure. It's like doing a whole Carlin routine on me.
Yeah. At this point here. So yeah, I got some things I probably need to go through and all like that. But I try to live kind of a real minimalist, as far as possessions go overall. Personal possessions and all like that. So I need to constantly try to stay on top of keeping that out with the old, in with the new kind of thing.
I asked that to say about myself that I can be a terrible procrastinator, and the tiny Steelers tie-in is that for all of the Steelers season last year, my cable feed was always so much further behind everyone else's. I'd even complain about it to you guys, like, how are you, Dave or Joe or somebody 60 seconds ahead of me? I couldn't even be on Twitter mid-game because I would get spoiled by the play. And I always kept meaning to contact Xfinity and ask them what was going on. Just never did. Just watched on YouTube Live because the feed was quicker. I finally contacted them 2 days ago and said, why is my feed so far behind? And they sent a refresh signal and it's fixed. So like I could have had this problem solved a year ago, and I just was so lazy and just never got around to it. And hopefully we're good to go because things seem to be improved. So that is my level of procrastination that gets me into trouble sometimes. So that's just my personal story I'm sharing here.
So all you had to do is call the cable company and say, refresh my signal.
That's all I did.
That you have a time delay or something.
Yeah. And it seems pretty fixed. And I should have done that last September, but I just powered through. So anyway, that's my Steelers tie-in about my laziness knowing no bounds sometimes. All right, Dave, let's jump in.
I am obsessive compulsive in several areas of my life. So I stay very regimented on certain aspects in day-to-day life, so I don't procrastinate when it comes to certain times on the clock and all like that. But that's interesting about the cable there. Oh, speaking of cable, the I don't know if did you watch? You don't? Do you have HBO? Did you watch Are you watching the new Hard Knocks Giants off season?
I'm not going to get HBO until I'm forced to watch the Steelers AFC North series, but I saw some of the clips and some interesting running back discussions about Saquon Barkley.
I almost wonder if this Giant series might be the best one of the year because of the lead up to the season and the draft decisions and free agency. I think they're only 35-minute segments. So I watched the first one a couple of days ago, and it was pretty good. And we got a treat. Our own Joe Clark showed up in that episode there from the short kind of montage of clips that they had from the East West Shrine Bowl in Texas. So that was quite a bit of a try. I wonder if did Ross needle Joe in the latest episode of Depot Dive or no?
I'll have to double check, but I told Joe he should get his IMDb DB page going because he's a star now. He's on the big screen.
All right, enough of the small talk. Get us to some Steelers stuff here.
All right, got some commentary, some stats you and I have done on Arthur Smith and Pittsburgh's offense. I'll start with you, Dave. You had a really interesting study. We know with Arthur Smith, one of the hallmarks of his offense should be, in one big change, almost certain to come to Pittsburgh in 2024, will be an increase in play action for years. And we mean that literally for years. Pittsburgh has been among the least frequent teams using play action. And for the longest time, I thought it was related to Ben because he couldn't move and his knees were shot. And so he didn't want to have to get under center and try to drop back more aggressively. But even under Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, et cetera, the play action rates remain, among the league's lowest. That should change under Arthur Smith, who has had some of the highest play action rates. And so you wanted to look at how effective have the new quarterbacks been in using play action, and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, comparing their stats and efficiency with play action and without play action. Some interesting data. I'll let you explain, but what were your main takeaways?
Yeah, and even after I completed that, I went did a search on Twitter, and there was a chart on there from last season showing the amount of play action that each team had, and the Falcons used quite a bit of. They were one of the top 2 or 3 teams, I think, in the NFL as far as play action usage last year. The Broncos were, I think, right around in the middle, maybe a little less than the average league wide. And then the Steelers, this is something that we obviously have written about, I think, several times over the last couple of years, just the lack of play action overall. And last year they were towards the bottom of the league as far as percentage of play action. And one of the things I've been thinking about quite a bit, I know we've talked about it since Arthur Smith was hired and these new quarterbacks come in, is really kind of looking forward to how much play action might be used in 2024. And, specifically if this team wants to use a lot of, heavier personnel groupings and build the offense around running the football. And obviously if you run the football well, your play action should be even better off of that kind of thing. And I know our old Clayton Eckhart, not long after, I think Smith and Russell Wilson, came on board, did a look into play action, but more along the lines of Pro Football Focus grades and all like that. So I was thinking about that the last couple of days and decided to deep dive on some statistics from Sports Info Solutions to kind of plus I wanted to play with Data Wrapper and see what kind of creative charts I can make and how they would look. And so what I did was I looked at the EPA, the expected points added for play action, and the bust percentage, which is the percentage of pass attempts that resulted in an EPA of less than -1. So a very unsuccessful play. I wanted to look at kind of an X-axis and a Y-axis for both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, not only in 2023, but 2022 as well, too. It started with me just looking at those two stats in particular in 2023 for Wilson and Justin Fields, and the results of that showed that, you look at the bust percentage, and then you also look at the aggregate expected points added from 2023 when both those guys, used play action when compared to the top 25 quarterbacks in the NFL in such attempts. And they didn't rank well overall. They're in the bad quadrant, the top left quadrant on this particular scatter plot when it came to that. So that was a bit concerning at first. So after seeing that, I said, well, was this a one-year thing? Let's go back and pull the 2022 data and table that up to see, what that kind of looks like. And then once again, you see that Justin Fields, really those two kind of are comparable as far as the statistics that they put up in both EPA and bust percentage on play action when compared to the rest of the NFL. They're in the upper left quadrant, the bad quadrant, once again. So with 2 years of data, when it comes to play action, I said, okay, well, that's them with play action. I want to go look at them with and without play action. So I pulled the data. It was play action with, play action without, for each quarterback over the course of the past 2 years, and I put those guys in a separate scatter plot. Now, obviously, here's what I found. I mean, without play action, both quarterbacks were even worse when it came to EPA, and I used EPA per attempt, not an aggregate in this particular scatter plot here. Because the first two were used with just an EPA aggregate. So if you had a couple of just hugely disastrous plays, those things would obviously kill you. And you kind of hope over, by using an attempt, you get a little bit maybe cleaner look and all. My main takeaway of all of this, obviously I'd like people to read the post and draw their own conclusions on this, but both quarterbacks were better in these two stats when using play action as opposed to not using play action. Mm-hmm. They really, if you look at the final scatter plot that I have in there, really Fields and Russell Wilson were kind of loosely grouped together, if you will, albeit on the wrong side of things, because they had negative EPA per attempts and they had bust percentages nearing 15% or greater on those plays. But overall, they kind of grouped together, except for Justin Fields without play action in 2022. He's way on the other end of the perspective. Well, after doing all that, I said, well, let's go back and kind of look at just the raw passing stats for all these, for these years, both with play action and without play action. And I think if you look at it that way, it doesn't look as bad because you're not comparing them to other quarterbacks. You're just using, completion percentage and touchdowns and interceptions and sacks. And I threw in there, my favorite adjusted net yards for passing attempt and all like that. But once again, I think that the data shows that Fields and Russell Wilson, as a whole, were better quarterbacks when using play action as opposed to not using play action. The big thing I think that jumps out overall when you look at that 2022 Well, 2022 specifically for Russell Wilson with play action, he had 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Obviously you don't like those interceptions matching the touchdowns, but that was his first year in Denver. There he had a passer rating on play action of 75.6. His adjusted net yards per passing attempt was a dismal 5.3. He improved dramatically just in raw passing stats and play action in 2023 over 2022. He has a nice, a decent quarterback rating of 112.8. His adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number went up to 7.3. He had 10 TDs versus 1 interception. He had 9 sacks once again. The thing with Justin Fields, I think that really stuck out the most when looking at the raw passing stats for both play action and without play action in 2022 and 2023 is the increases in his adjusted net yards per passing attempt number in both those years. I mean, in 2022 and 2023 with him without using play action, I mean, he had, adjusted net yards per passing attempt numbers under 5, 3.8 and 4.9 specifically, without play action. With play action in the last 2 years, it's at least over 6. Now I think if you would probably look at league wide over the 2 years of the quarterbacks with the top 25 quarterbacks in play action attempts, they probably have an average adjusted net yards of greater than 6.2 and 6.4. Mm-hmm. But that when looking at that specific stat, you definitely want it over 6.0, whatever, using play action, not using play action, whatever there. The other thing that really just jumps out overall when looking at just the raw passing stats is the amount of sacks both these quarterbacks have taken over the last 2 years. And that's something that goes back to what we've talked about both these quarterbacks from the moment they became Pittsburgh Steelers is, I used other stats to get back to the same.
All roads lead to Rome, and all roads lead to how often these guys have been sacked.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main takeaways here. Obviously the study was done about play action, but I think when you look at it all at all angles and contrast and compare, is this. With both these quarterbacks, regardless of who plays and how much they play, they got to get sacked less because sacks are such killer, plays. Just so happens we had Cam Hayward ranting and raving these last several days about pressures versus sacks and all like that. Look, both can be damning, right? Sure. Quarterback consistently getting pressured, and percentage of those pressures leading to sacks and all like that. But I think I found myself back in a familiar spot here where regardless of how much play action that this team uses in 2024, we got to see them limit the sacks for these quarterbacks here. And that goes back to the onus of trying to have a more thoughtfully rhythmic offense and getting the football out of the quarterback's hands. I went and looked at a couple of Russell Wilson sacks from last season, and a couple of them were the offensive line just getting beat, quickly. But there were some, obviously, where Russell Wilson was holding on to the football and, trying to make plays and just, ultimately getting tracked down 5 seconds after the snap of the football occurs. If the sack totals drop overall with whoever's under center, that will help tremendously. And I really think the other main takeaway here, and it's probably to be expected overall, is that both quarterbacks were better when using play action when not. And sure. Obviously, you hope the use of play action in any offense would produce better results when maybe not using play action there. So
that was going to be my question: is it fair to assume that every quarterback, are there any quarterbacks that are worse using play action than not using play action in terms of the numbers you studied, EPA, et cetera?
I would have to look at it. When I looked at the EPA per attempt versus bust percentage, because there would have been so much data. If I was looking at this 2 years, the last 2 seasons independently for each quarterback, and if I was using the top 25 quarterbacks in each season in attempts, you can imagine how busy that scatter plot would be. Mm-hmm. But I would think that the main, I don't know this for a fact, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I'm willing to guess that more times than not, quarterbacks were better when using play action as opposed to not. At least your middling quarterbacks,
I agree. I would guess that almost every quarterback is better with play action. So my question is, are Wilson and Fields getting the smallest boost when it comes to play action among the quarterbacks? Are they the ones that see an uptick in production, but is it the smallest amount relative to the rest of the league? Is kind of my question in my head.
Yeah, and that thank you for that, because that will give me another rabbit hole to kind of go down to. I did not look at it from that angle, but that is a good point. How much? What would you rather see? Because the expected, like I said, the expected points per attempt when you look at both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields over the last couple of seasons, they're both kind of grouped, kind of close together overall. When you look at both those stats over the last 2 years, but both were better, overall when using play action as opposed to not. I can table. I don't want to say most definitely yes, without having the data in front of me, but I would surmise that maybe it's hard to say. I would have to look. Would you want to look at it at an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number? Because I would imagine most quarterbacks are better in that area with play action as opposed to not. Would you want it looked at with EPA aggregate or EPA per attempt or bust percentage or what?
I think EPA per attempt. I like keeping things relative from an attempt standpoint. So I think EPA per attempt, the difference, the delta, I think it's called, between play action and non-play action, to see what the increase is for all quarterbacks would be interesting.
Okay, over the last 2 years. All right, I might try to dig deeper into that data here then.
I do think the giant uptick in play action efficiency and productivity for Wilson from 2022 to 2023 is notable. In 2023 play action alone, how did Wilson stack up with other quarterbacks? Do you have data on that? Because the numbers sound pretty good with the quarterback rating, the adjusted net yards per passing attempt, et cetera.
As far as raw stats go, you mean with using play action in 2023 for him?
Raw stats or EPA, whatever's the best way to couch how he ranked compared to other quarterbacks just last year and just using play action. How well did Wilson perform?
Well, his best. I mean, if you just look at Russell Wilson using play action in 2023, it's his best statistical, subsection, I guess.
Right.
Overall. Now he still had a negative EPA per attempt, but his bust percentage, his percentage of bust plays was still, nearing 15 overall. But I mean, it was his best. Now, when you're saying compared to the other quarterbacks.
Yeah. Do we know how well that compared to the other quarterbacks last year?
Well, I would imagine it would still be in the lower third of the top 25 quarterbacks in such attempts.
Okay, gotcha. But
because,
a big improvement.
Because Yeah, because you're still dealing with a negative EPA per attempt, and you're still dealing with the bust percentage.
How does he get? I know this is kind of answering the question about EPA, but how did he get a negative EPA per attempt when the numbers sound good? 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. Was it the sacks that was really bringing that number down? If you had to guess why that EPA was so negative when some of the baseline numbers look pretty impressive.
Well, I tell you another thing that did kind of stick out is it's too bad I could have made that post even busier than what it was, but his average his air yards per attempt and his air yards for completion. Remember that this is a quarterback that the last I think a couple of years, threw either at or behind the line of scrimmage quite a bit.
The most, I think, in football, right? At least last year.
So that's going to obviously play a part in that, because even when he was completing, he completed, look at 2023 alone with him using play action. He completed 65.7% of his passes, but for 750 yards. I mean, if you look, even though his adjusted net yards per passing attempt was high at 7.3, the fact that he only had, that the ratio of touchdowns to interceptions was 10-1.
Right.
So you're thinking, man, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up for that. He did have the 9 sacks, and sacks obviously count against adjusted net yards per passing attempt. But I would imagine that the fact that his air yards per completion wasn't all that great when you both in play action, not play action, I would think that would be the driving force of him not ranking as well against the other quarterbacks last year when using play action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's why his EPA was still negative despite a 10-1 touchdown interception ratio. Correct?
It wasn't enough to offset. The good plays weren't good enough to offset the bust percentage was.
Gotcha. So what is the takeaway? If a Steelers fan was trying to sum up all this great data in a couple of sentences, is it a good thing that Arthur Smith is likely to use more play action? Will it be beneficial for Wilson, for this offense, and how beneficial will it be?
Well, I think you get back into the talk about how good is the running game, right? Even though, and we've talked about this several times, we're going deep into this. Several conversations we've had over the years about play action usage alone, and how effective is play action even if you don't have a strong running game. Right. I think I know one, Brandon Staley, talking about, when he was with the Chargers as their head coach. I think it's been a couple of seasons ago. He had that press conference about you can have successful play action passing game even if your running game isn't all that great.
Right. Right. The old age thinking is that you had to run the ball to have good play action. The new school thinking is that as long as you give the appearance of running the ball, defenses still have to respect it, and play action can still be effective.
Right. But I think to some degree, the better that your running game is, has to help within that. Overall, I'm none of this study got me thinking, oh crap. Well, I think a heavy usage of play action will help this team overall. I still think that my main takeaway of all this is back to kind of the things we've talked about. Got to have some rhythmic passing, no matter use of play action or not, for both these quarterbacks. And I think that hopefully a byproduct of him in Arthur Smith's system will be an average depth of intended air target. Look, we talked about Russell Wilson's good at throwing the football down the field, man. I mean, especially when you get 40 yards or farther, he can still sling it. Now, obviously, you're not going to have 200 pass attempts of 40 yards or more in the air, but I think an onus of at least trying to push the football to the, beyond the line of scrimmage, specifically, 3, 4, 5 yards, quick slants, just anything that pushes the football down the field more, as opposed to just throwing behind the line of scrimmage or right at the line of scrimmage. I think that's the area that we need to watch closely, specifically with Russell Wilson.
Okay, that's fair. I think honestly, even throwing short is still beneficial to Wilson and to this offense. And maybe that's one reason why his yards per attempt was low last year. And I don't know if it's going to be much higher in 2024 in Pittsburgh, but that could mean that if you're just if you're booting and rolling out and throwing a 3-yard pass in the flat to Connor Hayward, yeah, it's not going to be great for your yards per attempt or maybe EPA and those kinds of things, but it's good for the offense. I mean, Pittsburgh, what Smith has to do of many things is just create some easy yards for this offense. Right. The last several seasons, everything's just been so difficult. Everything was just trying to do things the hard way. And even a simple thing like a boot on 1st and 10 that gets you 6 yards and puts you in 2nd and 4, you want to hit big plays, of course, but those things are important too, to stay on schedule, to stay in manageable situations and not rely solely on your run game to move the sticks and be successful on 1st down. That sets up, 2nd and manageable. So I'll take, a bunch of boots and Wilson that has a bunch of throws in the flat and kind of quick, easy, half-field reads where he can even run occasionally if nothing's there, get up, pick up 5 yards and keep yourself on schedule. I just think you got to create some free, easy yards in this offense that really has not been there for several seasons.
I think, and blowing it down once again, the sacks have got to come down. That we agree on that. Yep. I would like to see Russell Wilson not utilize so many pass completions either at the line of scrimmage or behind. And look, pushing the football down the field doesn't have to be 15 yards in the air every time. We're talking, if you're able to complete a pass 4 yards down the line of past the line of scrimmage on 1st down and 10, and if you can get a half a yard after the catch in that situation, you have a successful play, right?
Yeah, technically so. Yep.
So just would like to see him not rely so much on either, on negative air yards, really.
Yeah, I mean, and also if you're running some of those boots, the ball's getting out of your hand quicker. You have cleaner reads, and hopefully you're taking fewer sacks. And so, yeah, I'd be okay with his yards per attempt being on the lower end off play action. I think you might see that this year because of the nakeds and the rollouts and the boots. It's probably going to be pretty frequent in this offense. But hopefully you hit some big plays too, and they should stuff down the seam, glance routes, some of those go balls 1v1 to Pickens. I think where the run game and play action really mesh and marry the best is if you can have that successful run game, if you're going to be a 12 personnel personality, which Pittsburgh likely to be, you're going to force teams to put 8 in the box. They're going to have to match your personnel, and that's going to just naturally create one-on-one opportunities on the outside. That's where George Pickens can really thrive. So that's where I think the run game has that utility in terms of play action. Yes, you can have the successful play action without a strong run game, but a strong run game will force teams to really load up the box. And that's why I'm a little less worried when people say, is Pickens going to be doubled and taken away? There's a concern there, and you'd like to add a receiver opposite to take some of the heat off of him. But I do think there will still be plenty of 1v1 chances for Pickens, because if you're running well, teams are stacking the box, run play action, get your one-on-one opportunities. I think that's how this offense all works together.
Yeah, I would agree. And one other thing, when you look at Russell Wilson, I guess with play action in 2022 versus 2023, he only had like a 56% completion rate in 2022, and in 2023 it was almost 10% higher at 665.7. So maybe he was trying to push the football down the field a little bit too much, off of play action in 2022. And then obviously last year, a little bit shorter, easier completions, jumped up his completion percentage quite a bit.
I just think in 22, I hate to just throw seasons out, but that was just such a mess of a year for the entire offense. They finished 32nd in scoring or 31st. I mean, nothing's going to look good. Nathaniel Hackett was so in over his head, and everybody knew that by week 10 and week 11, this guy's just going to be out of a job here, one and done, which he was. And so I'm encouraged that Wilson's numbers last year were still, I would call them decent to good overall, despite not meshing well with Sean Payton's system and scheme. I think Wilson's going to fit with Arthur Smith's system a lot better. It's a little less demanding in terms of the precision and preciseness that Sean Payton demands, a Drew Brees type. I think Smith's offense offers a bit more flexibility there that Wilson will enjoy and be more comfortable in. So the fact that Wilson saw a big improvement with Payton last year with a competent, coach and coordinator and offensive scheme, despite not being a great fit for it, to me is encouraging when I think you get a really good mesh in terms of personalities and values, ideals, philosophies when it comes to Wilson and Smith. So that leaves me optimistic.
Yeah. And once again, some of the strong point people are going to listen to this probably say, boy, y'all are take every opportunity to kill Russell Wilson. But I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, he still has the ability to air the ball out down the field. What do we say? Led the league in 40+ air yard completions and touchdowns last season. And if you just look at his red zone production last year, what did he throw? Something like 26 touchdowns in total. I think 20 of those were within the red zone. So he can still get it done in short areas of the field too. I think just certain aspects of his game between the 20s, especially play action, non-play action, those could stand to improve, and hopefully it will. But it is one area that I will be tracking as the season gets underway, is the play action aspect of it, because once again, we are expected to see a heavy use of play action in this offense.
Yeah, and that I think is still ultimately a good, because Pittsburgh has just so criminally underutilized. And not to go back in time, I really wonder why play action wasn't leaned on more the past 2 seasons. With Ben, I could understand that to a degree, given his lack of mobility, his age, and just probably an unwillingness to do so. But that trend continued under the post-Ben era. And I can't for the life of me, because Kenny Pickett was not bad off play action. There were some good numbers on him. So that was frustrating among many things of why this offense could not create some of those free yards by not leaning on play action more.
Agreed.
Do you have any idea why? We're just guessing, I know, but why Pittsburgh was so anti-play action the last 2 years?
It was so frustrating. No, I mean, I've never figured out why that was, especially at certain points during the season. They were running the football a little bit better,
Yeah, you had quarterback mobility. You had guys comfortable under center. Kenny Pickett worked under center. It was a pro-style offense out of Pitt. I don't understand. It's all spilt milk, I know, but should see uptick. And certainly one number to track we'll be looking at closely is that play action rate, which should be much, much higher than it's been in 5-6 years. Study I did on Arthur Smith, and I really didn't have an idea of what I even wanted to look at when I started. I'm sure you probably relate to that feeling sometimes too, but I'm actually really happy with the way the study came out. I wanted to see just the touchdown distribution of Arthur Smith's offenses and Pittsburgh Steelers offenses in terms of how many players are catching touchdown passes. And I will say off the top, inherently, larger distributions where a bunch of guys are catching touchdowns, or tighter ones where a few guys are catching touchdowns, it's not inherently good or bad. It just is. But I wanted to see what the data said. And the data, I think, was very clear. Under Arthur Smith, a bunch of guys catch touchdown passes over the last 5 years in which he's been coordinating or the head coach of a team in an offense. He's had an average of 9.2 players per year catch at least one touchdown. For Pittsburgh, over that same span, 2019 to 2023, only 5.4 players have caught touchdowns per season. That's the fewest in football. I know that Pittsburgh has not thrown a bunch of touchdown passes in a couple of years, including the last 2. But even if you look at years where they've thrown more touchdowns, 2021, 2020, Arthur Smith was still basically doubling that number overall. The point is, he gets everybody involved, especially in red zone. He's talked about that philosophically. He wants everyone to feel engaged, like they could score on any one play again, especially near the goal line. So overall, my takeaway is that you're going to see a bunch of people score touchdowns this year. It may mean that no one player scores a lot. It may mean that your leading touchdown receiver is sitting at 4 or 5, but it probably means that 7, 8, 9, 10 different Steelers catch a touchdown pass this year, as opposed to, last year it was 4, in 2022 it was 6. It's never been above 6 since I think 2018. So I think you'll see a lot of different people do their touchdown celebrations this year.
And I think Russell Wilson did a good job of kind of spreading around at least the last couple of years, didn't he? Did you look at that aspect of it, of how how Denver spread around, or at least Russell Wilson specifically spread around touchdown passes?
Yeah, it's a good point. Looks like there was a good distribution, even though Cortland Sutton caught 10, and we're looking at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different players caught a touchdown in Denver last year. So Yeah, I mean, again, sometimes that's noise where, you go through your progressions and this guy just happens to be open on one play. I know it's not always the intent to get the ball to everybody, but I mean, Smith has literally talked about his desire to do that. So it's not, to me, just randomness. There is a game plan, a philosophical aspect that backs it up. So yeah, I think you'll see something like, Darnell Washington catch 2 or 3 touchdowns. Connor Hayward do the same. Pat Frymuth may only be at 3 or 4 touchdowns, but George Pickens may be at 4 to 6 touchdowns this year. But you're going to see a bunch of that and some one-offs too, or just some random, I don't know, Rodney Williams catches a touchdown, something like that. And heck, we've seen even in his Tennessee days when the offenses were humming, offensive tackles catch touchdown passes. So I would not be shocked if Dylan Cook or somebody, they got some athletic tackles. I know that's kind of a crazy thing to talk about, but could a tackle off a little trickery catch a touchdown? I'm not going to rule that out either.
All right. So my main takeaway is you have Rodney Williams on the 53 right now. Huh?
Yes. Sorry, Michael Pruitt. You are the loser here. That'll be a fun battle, a tight end battle. But yeah, so that was my study on that one. You can check that out on SteelersDepot.com. Dave, also, I've been looking at Alex Highsmith. I know we'll probably talk about him either today or next episode in our 90 and 30 series. He's coming up. And I'd written about this right after the season ended, but kind of wanted to expand on it some more. I think for multiple reasons, you saw his sack numbers fall last year. He had 14.5 2 years ago without TJ Watt for half of the season. He had 7 last season, a little quieter year overall. And I think one reason for that, I know Watt's presence was, a major reason for that. Obviously, the 19 sacks that he had kind of, taking some of those opportunities away. But you saw left tackles really start to defend and adjust to that potent inside spin counter that Highsmith has. It's been so stupid good. It's, to me, the best in football that won so often his first couple seasons. And you saw, as he emerged, as he's kind of gotten the radar of people with his big 2022 season without Watt in the lineup, teams could really focus in on how Highsmith wins. And I think I charted his last 7 spin attempts last season all failed. They were all countered by the opposing left tackle. So for him, his mission is, how do you stay one step ahead? How do you counter the counter? I think it's going to be a big thing for Alex Highsmith is teams know how he wins and how he deploys that move and, big down situations, third down, late game type stuff. So I'm very interested in seeing how Highsmith tries to stay one step ahead of this chess game in terms of, okay, he had the tackles were able to counter his spin move. How does he counter their counter? That'll be very, very interesting to watch.
Yeah. Remember what Kevin Green used to say, I think even after, I think when he was outside linebackers coach, you obviously have to have a couple of key moves that you have, but you also have to have, you need to constantly work on your counters and all like that. I think Alex Highsmith has continually to progress overall as far as a technician goes as a pass rusher. I think we've seen him make improvements in kind of the speed to power game. That's one area where I really do think that he needs to improve on in 2024. And then, yeah, I think he's got enough snaps in this league now. He's seen enough stuff. He obviously has a counterpart that he can learn from in TJ Watt, but it's got to come like breathing at this point. If I see this, I've got to do this. He's got to have, if he does progress on his counters against counters, then that's how he'll be able to take the next step. And look, if this front five, stays healthy and performs like we think that they'll be able to in 2024, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Alex Highsmith to win, him and Cam Hayward specifically. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for these guys to win one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And personally, I think that we should. I think a double-digit sack number for Alex Highsmith in 2024 should be, 10 specifically should be the minimum that we see. Yeah. I think anything below 10, obviously, it could play out different ways, and there'd be reasons for it. But I think anything under a 10 sack number for Alex Highsmith will, at least on paper, look to be a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, he had set the goal of double-digit sacks before that 2022 season, and he obviously blew past that. I think one underrated issue last year too of all you lost in Cam Hayward was he's so good at running those stunts and those twists, and they trusted him so much to do so. I don't have data on this, but I imagine they probably didn't do that as often last season because you don't trust Keanu Benton. He played a bit of defensive end, or Leal or Loudermilk to be able to contain on the outside and run that stunt effectively. And Hayward always had those, and still does, those little veteran tricks of the trade of grabbing the guard so he can't, be able to take the looper in Highsmith. So I think that was one factor. Hopefully they get to run kind of their twists and their games more often. In terms of Highsmith and my suggestions, not that he needs my advice, in terms of how to counter the counters, I had two ideas. One, use that spin move in less predictable situations. Again, last year it was really third down, late in game, the big money downs when you're trying to really make that big play. And I understand why that's a good time to use that move. But if you use it in more randomly in a first down play, a second down play, second quarter, early in the game, you kind of get that tackle unsure and uncertain when that move is going to open up. And the other thing he could do, and this is going to be more advanced and harder to do, can you do the fake spin, which is a move that more high level pass rushers can use. There's a great clip at DeMarcus Ware using the fake spin where you kind of half turn inside and then spin back to the outside and rush to the outside instead. And that's a great clip of Ware beating Joe Staley for a sack on that. But there are other guys who have done it. Chandler Jones has done it. There was even some college UCLA defensive end that pulled it off for a sack. So that's going to, you can't use that often, but if he could really pull off that move, I think that's the next logical counter, is to fake the inside spin and really play mind games with these tackles.
You made a good point there about Cameron Hayward. How much do you, because he is such a technician of sometimes when he is asked to be, kind of the crasher and hook some guys and all like that, how much do you think Alex Highsmith was impacted last year by not having Cameron Hayward for all those games next to him?
It's hard to quantify, but I think a good bet, and maybe that's just a something to plant in my head about how many stunts they ran without Hayward and what the decrease was there, because I'm betting it existed. Because when you run those stunts, the tackle, the crasher, his role is he's got to be able to contain on the outside. Hayward has to now become the contain guy, where Highsmith is going to loop to the inside into the B gap, and he's going to try to get that interior pressure. But the end then now becomes an outside linebacker, quote unquote, that can't let the quarterback get outside. And you got to trust your end to be able to do that, to be able to contain properly and get to a spot and not kind of get picked off. And you probably had less trust, like I said, in whoever it was, Loudermilk, doing so than Cam Hayward. And so you probably just ran fewer games and twists. So yeah, I'm betting there probably was some trickle down effect on Highsmith from not having Hayward out there.
Kind of running through my head too, and along with some recency bias of some things I've looked at, is an underrated part of Larry Ogunjobi's game his ability to crash and hook.
I don't have a great feel for his aptitude at that. It wasn't something that I had really on my radar.
It feels like he's pretty decent at it.
I mean, he's athletic, and so it kind of helps to be able to help set the edge and do some of those things. And I just wanted to see more production from Ogunjobi in general. Right. So I'd have to look at that. I think Hayward is really, really good at it, and that doesn't get talked about enough. I don't have a good sense of how prolific Ogunjobi is or is not at those things.
All right, when you look at this front five in base situations across the board, when you look at Highsmith, Hayward, Keanu Benton, Larry Ogunjobi, and T.J. Watt. I mean, if healthy and running on all cylinders, I mean that's got to be up there in the tops of the league as far as a front five goes, right? At least entering this season, you would think.
I think so. I was going to ask you, what is a good sack goal for the Steelers defense in 2024? What should that number be? They were over 50 for many years. It ended in
60. You would think that if those guys stayed healthy for all 17 games, man, you'd think they'd be able to put some quarterbacks on the ground.
60 was my number that I've been chasing for years. I know I've written several times about, trying to get to 60, and they've never been able to get there. I think that might be pushing. I mean, I would love to see it, obviously. They were only at 47 last year, which I felt was a little light. I know that Hayward obviously being out, they got to get more D-line, sack production. I think at least getting back to 50 is a requirement. Hopefully 55 is kind of my number I'm thinking about.
I mean, obviously, if Larry Ogunjobi and look, I mean, Keanu Benton, for as good as he was his rookie season, he left some sacks on the table, right?
Yep, he did.
And Larry Ogunjobi, we haven't seen the production out of him since he's arrived in Pittsburgh that we're hoping to get. So those, and obviously Cameron Hayward missing the time that he missed last year. You should see. I mean, anything lower than 50 obviously would be a huge disappointment out of these 5.
Yeah, especially when TJ Watt's going to give you, at least 15 and probably closer to that 20 range. That's, taking up a large chunk there. Yeah, I thought, only to be at 47 last year was a little underwhelming for Pittsburgh. I think they had 7.5 sacks from their D-line last year. Again, Hayward being out, a big impact on that. What is a number, just to kind of keep in vogue of this, what is a good sack number for Hayward to try to reach this year, assuming he's healthy, which he's declared himself basically to be 100% healthy? He was double-digit guy before getting hurt. What is he on the other side of the injury?
I think 7 to 8, I think, is the first numbers that pop in my head.
I think that's right. I was going to say somewhere in that 6 to 7 to 8 range. I think double digits. I'm sure he's confident he can do that again, and more power to him. I think it's going to push it. Historically, D tackles at his age getting double digits is very rare to see, but I think 6 to 8 is still realistic.
Let's see, 10 from Highsmith, 7 from Hayward. That's 17. Feels like Benton should be able to hit the 5 mark, right?
I'll say 3, be a little more conservative.
All right, so we're at 20.
Yep.
And then Watt, how many?
20, just put 20 on him.
All right, 40. And then Ogunjobi, the wild card there, I guess.
Be nice to get. Yeah, that's a guy I'd love to hit 5. He's not done it in Pittsburgh. I'd love to do 5 for him, but I'm not confident it's going to happen.
So what did we get to? 45 there with expectations?
If you give
45 across those 5?
Yes.
Okay. And then, you're going to get, maybe a couple of corner sacks. You got Queen that's good at get after the quarterback, probably going to get a couple.
Peyton Wilson maybe gets 1, 2. Right. His ability. So, I mean, if it all sounds good. I want to see this team be able to do it. They've been under 50 for the last 2 years. They need to get at least to above 50 in a 17-game season in 2024.
True or false? If they don't hit the 50 sack total as a team in 2024, they will not make the playoffs.
I'll say that's false. They did it last year with a worse offense. I think if they hit 50, I'll be really, really confident they will make the playoffs, but I don't think they have to hit 50 in order to make the playoffs. They got to be close, but I don't think it's a requirement because last year they didn't do it and they still made the playoffs.
Okay.
What was your take on the Hayward sack versus pressure? Hayward's point was that, pressure is good, but sacks are really the things that matter. Analytics may suggest the pressure can be, as effective in some ways as sacks. What was your input there?
Look, if you line up on any given play and you ask me, do I want a pressure or a sack? I'm going to choose the sack, right?
Sure.
Because it, as Cam Hayward said, it's the more definitive, negative play, hard to overcome situation. I do think, though, over time, a heavy percentage of pressure should equate into X amount of sacks. I think they go hand in hand, but I mean, obviously, the better stat is the sack. I mean, who's going to argue against that? But I guess what caused all that? I guess
Trey Wingo tweeted something about it.
A heavy pressuring. My takeaway is a heavy pressuring defensive unit. The percentage of sacks should follow.
Yeah, I mean, that's logical. I'm with you. I mean, I'm a little mixed because I understand Hayward's point, and I felt that in some ways myself. I think in some ways pressures matter less today because you have so many mobile quarterbacks who can be able to scramble, extend the play if you pressure them that, if you're facing the Peyton Mannings of the world, you pressure him, you're probably going to impact him greatly because he can't move. He can't escape that pressure. But you try to pressure Mahomes, how many times has that guy been under siege and making a play out of seemingly nothing? I know that he's Mahomes, but it goes true for a lot of these mobile quarterbacks. So I understand, pressure could lead to a touchdown still. Pressure is no guarantee of anything, but this will be an article I write a couple days from now. I'm trying to work in is it David Bowie under pressure thing? That was him, right?
Yeah.
Are we out here? Okay.
Queen. Yeah.
Okay. I know what my Queen stance is unpopular here, but I'm going to work with it. The numbers last year for Pittsburgh's defense, when they pressured quarterbacks, they had a quarterback rating of 55.1. Without pressure, they had a quarterback rating of 97.2. So a big change there, obviously. And that's probably true for every single team, every single quarterback. They're better without pressure than when they're dealing with pressure. So empirically, the numbers still suggest pressure matters a ton. But I do my heart says to agree with Hayward because pressure can still result in any outcome.
And then obviously this will all go back to the Pro Football Focus and the Myles Garrett, pressure win rates and all like that. I understand where Cam's coming from because once again, if you on any given play, if you ask me if I want a pressure or a sack, I'm going to choose a sack, right?
Sure. And Hayward obviously understands the value of pressure and what that can do, but his point was there's still no guarantee of what the outcome is going to be with the pressure.
Sure.
With a sack, the outcome is, of course, a sack.
Right. It's a more definitive negative play for sure.
Yeah,
guaranteed to be negative because sacks are behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, exactly. So that is an interesting discussion. I was happy to see Hayward weigh in and kind of get that, offer his perspective on the other side of the stats of it all.
All right, where to?
All right, Dave, I think we can start going through your 90 and 30 series, and I exited out the search section there. So where are we at? Give me a second, I'll pull up where we have to pick up where we last left off.
We talked about Frazier and Freiermuth. I don't think we got to Graham, Hamilton, and Anderson Hardy, right?
Right. So we'll start with Thomas Graham.
All right. Thomas Graham Jr., obviously signed to a reserve futures contract in January, entered the NFL originally as a 2021 draft pick of the Chicago Bears out of Oregon, was with the Cleveland Browns. Last year during the preseason, he had an ankle injury. I think he spent half the year on their reserve injured list and was waived from it in November. One start in 11 total games. He's played a little bit, has logged 79 special team snaps in his NFL career, has played both outside and in the slot during his limited NFL playing time. Most of his snaps with the Browns, the last time he saw action in 2022 came in the slot. I think, however. So he did not log any playing time in 2023 due to his ankle injury. So his last meaningful snaps came in 2022. The Steelers have several slot-capable cornerbacks on their roster. One of them obviously being Cameron Sutton. You got Beanie Bishop going to try to make it run at things and all this offseason. I think realistically here, overall, when it comes to Graham, even though he does have some position flexibility that might help his overall cause, feels like making the 53-man roster, he'd need a lot of help, some negative help overall from the rest of the roster as far as injuries. So I think the long-term looking at him, assuming he sticks all summer, would be as a practice squad player.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he's a guy that I know Grady Brown, the DB's coach, was talking up a little bit in the spring and just mentioning how many slot opportunities, how many reps he was getting. I imagine with Cam Sutton in the fold, that number is going to be pretty reduced here in the summer. He's got some physicality. Graham does I think Tom Meade liked him coming out of Oregon, but the number crunch, even though the slot position's pretty open when you have Sutton and UDFA and Bishop and Josiah Scott. It's got a little Graham does Duke Dawson vibe of, maybe he gets a look, but the math just really ain't mathing on him.
I agree. All right, next one on the list, a guy I think we just talked a bit about recently as far as depth on the offensive line, Devray Hamilton, signed by the Raiders as an undrafted free agent out of Duke in 2021, had some limited NFL playing time. After bouncing around on a few practice squad. I think his last stop was with the Giants the last 2 seasons. He's logged just 39 total regular season offensive snaps with them in 2022. He was unemployed last season after being waived with an injury settlement. So, he wasn't even able to get himself, ultimately on a practice squad. He has, I think, got some position flexibility to him, even though his final college season at Duke in 2020, he was mainly a right tackle. I think his length allows him to at least give it a go at the tackle position, but you've got so many tackles on this roster right now battling for the spots behind Fautano and Broderick Jones and Dan Moore and Dylan Cook. This is another guy that I think at best is looking to battle for a practice squad spot.
I agree. It's just too tough to crack on the 53, but practice squad, they're going to keep tackles, 1, potentially 2, and Hamilton could have a spot there. He's got some size, got some left, right tackle versatility. Can he move in space? Can he be able to work with those zone blocks and reach and cut off and combo? That'll be the thing for Hamilton to really watch that might make or break his status and standing with the team. So probably be a third string tackle, which gets you some decent reps. You're still getting really the same number of reps as the first team guys in terms of the team periods, because they go 4x4x4 in the 12 periods overall. But can you try to work the ladder? Can you show that versatility? He's got to talk to Dylan Cook, be like, hey Dylan, how did you survive and move up and kind of beat the odds and follow that path?
All right, the next guy on our list, Anderson Hardy, another guy I think we recently talked a little bit about, an Appalachian State product, signed with the Chiefs in 2023 as an undrafted free agent. Let's see, just played 42 offensive snaps with the Chiefs last preseason. All of them came at guard, though. He mostly played left tackle, I think, during his numerous seasons at Appalachian State. Lacks that ideal NFL length, especially with him having 32-inch arms. And I think overall this guy's going to get used extensively in training camp at a guard position, but it's going to be extremely, extremely tough for him to crack the 53-man roster, if not next to impossible, because of just numbers and everything else that goes along with it. He just, at best, it looks like he'd be battling for a practice squad spot.
I agree, but maybe a sleeper potential. Really good athlete overall with some experience. We'll see how he fits in the system. I think there's a potential for him to be a good scheme fit. Like Hamilton should be a third team guy, but the reps will still be there for him. The opportunity will still be there for him. So, I mean, obviously, no idea what's going to happen. He could just go quietly into the night and be cut late August, but that's a guy I want to watch for in camp.
All right. Who would be next on the list here?
Be Naji Harris and the Herbig brothers, Nate and Nick.
Yeah, Naji, I think it's pretty easy to kind of look at where he's been and where he's going to this point. I think the biggest thing to watch with him is what's going to happen with the contract moving forward. We've talked a little bit about, might he not get the amount of rushing attempts, with maybe Jaylen Warren getting a few more. I'm not worried about him overall. This is a guy that has stayed on the field for his first 3 NFL seasons. I think he's done better than what I initially thought he would do coming out of Alabama as far as the explosive run aspect. Even so, he's not going to give you those 50, 60, 70-yard runs that Jaylen Warren will. Naji can be used, needs to be used more out of the backfield than he was last season. I think everybody agrees on that. I think we'll see that, him and Jaylen Warren used extensively in the passing game. It's just, look, he needs to stay healthy. We'll see what happens with the contract, but I think the possibility of him having another 1,000-yard rushing season is definitely plausible. And I think there's an outside chance, depending on usage in the passing game, he could maybe exceed the total yards from scrimmage that he had last season.
What's his career high in yards from scrimmage? I know it was his rookie year. Repeating that, I assume, is going to be very difficult, you would say, given that he's no longer the belt guy. That was 1,667.
I think something would have to happen, maybe to Warren or something like that, for him to reach those totals. Last year, in 2022, yards from scrimmage was 1,263. He came close to that last season, 1,205. I think he could be right around there. I think 1,400 yards would be the absolute ceiling for him, but I'm expecting anywhere between 1,200 to 1,300, I think, yards from scrimmage.
I'd like him to beat the 2022 mark of 1,263 from scrimmage. I think 1,300 is a realistic number. This guy should still be able to rush for 1,100 yards. Like, he should be able to behind this better offensive line, this commitment to the run game, even knowing that the carries won't be, the volume won't be there like his rookie season. I still think 1,100 yards is where he should be. He's been at 1,034, 1,035 the last 2 years. A couple, one or two explosive runs will bring that number up. I want to see him get more involved in the pass game too. I know that he's no longer the third down back. Warren is a great third down back, but Harris as a rookie was excellent in the pass game. And with Wilson kind of throwing short more often, again, go back to the running back screen game, being more prolific and hopefully something they can lean on. I think Harris will have, at least from a yard standpoint, a decent year receiving.
I agree. Let's see who else we got.
Is your stance unchanged in the contract prediction from where you were at 2 weeks ago? I think you're still pretty quiet.
I'm just leaning, the longer I look at it, my gut wants to tell me that I think that ultimately maybe they get something done here. Once again, I'm not emphatic in thinking that and guaranteed it'll happen. I would bet people to bet against it probably overall. It's just when you look at it, man, how can they expect? I mean, I'll leave it at this, is what I've said about him. He is going to be one pissed off dude if he's asked to play for his current salary in 2024. And how could he not be?
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that. So we'll see. We'll see if it's been quiet on the extension front, but it's obviously the holiday. Maybe we get some movement next week on one of these guys, Freiermuth, most likely.
I just don't think people should be surprised if they get a deal done, especially one that I laid out there, one that would pay him right around $10.2 million in total cash. Look, if the barrier is going to be guaranteed cash beyond year one, he's pushing a snowball uphill. Right?
Yeah.
He's not going to win that. If he obviously, if they offer him, less than $9 million new money average, I don't think he takes something along those lines either there. So obviously it's going to depend on what the Steelers' best offer is. If it doesn't meet certain criteria, he's not, I don't think he's going to take it. But if he gets in that area of north of $9 million new money average, and if they at least guarantee the base salary and the signing bonus, which they would likely do as with an offer with him, I think there's an outside chance it gets done. I'm probably more bullish on it potentially happening than anybody you'll find at this point. But even so, there's no way you're going to pin me down to guarantee it will happen.
Sure. No, I'm not asking for a guarantee. Let me put a number to it, as arbitrary as it is. Percent chance Naji Harris has a new contract signed by September 8th, week 1 at Atlanta.
I don't know. My gut tells me to answer that 55%.
In the affirmative that he will?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be, I'm definitely lower. Still possible. I'll put it at 25%, just to put a number on it. So we'll see. All right, where we got the Herbigs next, right, Dave? We go Nate or Nick first?
No, we'll go Nate next. And, second year of a 2-year, $8 million contract with him. Let's see. Started 2 games in 2023. Both of them came at right guard in place of James Daniels. Also saw limited playing time in another game. I think one that Isaac Seumalo got dinged up on. He played 156 total snaps in 2023, with 60 more coming on special teams. Mason Cole played every snap last season, right? So he did not get any snaps at center in any regular season games. I think the only time we got to see him play a little bit of a center for the Steelers was last preseason. I think you'll see him play a little bit in preseason at the center position, along with obviously Zach Frazier. There's no reason right now to think he won't ultimately be on the team's 53-man roster, specifically as a swing guard / backup center. I think ideally, in an ideal situation, that he isn't likely to record a lot of playing time on offense in 2024, especially if both your guards stay healthy here. But I would think that there's a good chance that 2024 might be his last season in Pittsburgh.
In my deconstructing the roster series, I gave Herbig a 95% chance to make the 53, which of course means a 5% chance he doesn't. Is there any scenario you can see in which Nate Herbig is not part of the 53-man roster for week 1?
The only way I see that happening is if some veteran center with more experience from that's currently unemployed winds up on this roster.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't think potentially because the guard, Pittsburgh might be loaded up at guard with McCormick and Anderson, but obviously they may not be working as the backup center, which might be the most valuable thing Herbig can offer right now.
And that is that along with his position flexibility and the NFL snaps that he's played to date, I think his ability to at least give you something at center that you know something about ties him to this roster pretty good.
Is he this team's starting center for the first rep of training camp, July 25th? Will he be working with the ones to start day 1?
Probably, just so not that Zach Frazier's one to go around smelling himself, but I think just out of vet, pecking order type thing, I could see that happening.
Yeah, I could see the deference there. Although, I mean, Frazier obviously will get the chance. I wonder, will it be an every other day thing? Will they kind of rotate first team? I want to see how those snaps go. Because Frazier, we assume, is the week 1 start, but he's got to earn it. I mean, and Herbig has talked about that he's, I think, maybe not slimmed down, but he feels in a better place this year. So we'll see how he looks. I don't want to discount him entirely.
I'll just go as far as to tell people to not freak out if on the first 2 days or 3 days of training camp if Nate's the starting center.
And they will still freak out. But a good warning. That's a good point there.
All right. How about Nick?
Yeah, I'm really excited for Nick Herbig. A lot of these second-year guys, I'm really excited for, guys that, kind of got roles last year but should have bigger roles their second season, whether that's Keanu Benton, Joey Porter Jr., and Nick Herbig. So it's a guy that should be this team's clear number 3 outside linebacker, rotating in behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. He can play both sides. We'll see how he does with a bit more volume. I mean, he was super, super efficient last year. You look at his pressure rates and just overall productivity on a limited number of snaps. That probably will come down a bit just as you're playing more. Can he kind of play with tired legs, not always be as fresh as he was when he came into the game last year? But high energy guy, really hard worker, good technician, better against the run than I expected, given the lack of size and length and those concerns I had coming out of Wisconsin, which made me think he'd be an off-ball kind of linebacker. I think he's proven he can play outside linebacker and play on the edges. So he's working on that inside spin that Highsmith has patented. So I think he's a guy that's just hungry, always working, always learning. Really excited for him.
Boy, I tell you, you want to talk about one player where your thoughts and opinions and prospects of him through just 365 days ago, July 5th, 2023. Where were we on kind of wondering about what Nick Herbig would be, could do. He far exceeded my expectations for him. Personally, I don't think the game was too big for him overall. I think he fits as an edge. I think he belongs at the edge now moving forward. I think he's just one of those guys that bucks the trends as far as the heart and smarts and want to learn, outdo the measurable aspect of him. I think even in his limited playing time, which was 191 regular season snaps, man, you knew when he was on the field, and what more can you ask from a rookie, technically undersized edge guy? I think he maximized the snaps that he was out there. I even think when it can't come to the run game, I thought he showed some positive aspects there. He was initially viewed as the 4th outside linebacker behind Marcus Golden. Once again, he maximized his defensive playing time as a rookie, and I thought his development was impressive throughout the season, despite being viewed as that undersized guy. I think the future is really kind of bright for him. He's got a season under his belt now. He's not caught up in that rookie season tour, if you will, where you have to get ready for the combine and the pro day and go through all the post draft stuff. He knows what is expected of him in a first true NFL offseason. He gets to learn from some of the best in TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. The team obviously, no longer has Marcus Golden. They think he could be that next guy up behind those two there. So I think he just needs to bulk up a little bit, get stronger, work on all of his pass rush moves and his counters and everything that goes along with that. But I am excited to see what he could do as a number 3 outside linebacker in this system now.
Me too, and should still remain as a core special teams guy that can make an impact there. That's a guy that might. How many tackles on kicks might he make this year? I mean, he might have 10 of them, 15 of them, just on kick coverage alone with his attitude and the way that he plays, and the higher number of returns there should be this year. So that's a guy you'll be counting on to help you out on teams as well.
Yeah, I do kind of want, look, he is such a good special teams player, but he is going to probably be the number 3. Does he get a slightly lesser workload on special teams? Just maybe?
I wouldn't. I mean, you got to have some core guys. He's got the skill set to do so. I mean, if there was ever an injury, then obviously you would reevaluate that even in game. But I think you let that guy wind him up, let him go.
Yeah, he's stupid good on special teams, and that should be no difference in 2024. So overall, I mean, it's hard not to be bullish on him after his rookie season.
Yeah, just want to see him play tired. I don't know if he was tired for a single snap last year because he got to play fresh, which is not his fault, obviously, but there will be more on him this year, and that'll be important to watch.
All right, we knocked out 6 of those, I think, right?
Should we do one more? Do you want to? Because I don't know if we're going to get to all of them.
All right.
With the 2 podcasts.
What's the next bunch?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's Cam Hayward, Connor Hayward, Alex Highsmith. Can kind of roll through these pretty quickly. It's all largely no names. Cam Hayward, just the question is the contract really, and obviously bouncing back from his play. I'm more optimistic on him bouncing back than I think most fans are. It's been a pretty negative turn against Cam, but I think it's still going to be an anchor point to this defense.
Yeah, I think more than anything, can they get him off the field? Can you get one of these younger guys to help maybe get him off the field a couple more snaps a game? Especially early on in the season here. Just play time overall would like to see kind of diminish a little bit at his age and all. But I mean, if he's healthy and if he is truly look, you're still going to have worries about a guy that's 35 and the whole father time aspect and all. But I mean, when he's healthy and he's on, he's on. So he never was right last year, period. You could tell when he came back, and he's admitted this. I mean, we talked about it even once he did return. It did not look like he was able to run the way he wanted to run and do some of the things that he wanted to do. So if he's healthy, you should be able to, I think, 6, 7, 8 sacks is within realm for him. And I think he'll be fine as long as he stays healthy, obviously.
To me, as long as his strength is there and his power is there, then he can play. And even last year, you saw the strength to be able to hold up against around the point of attack. He just couldn't get out of his stance. He couldn't explode. He couldn't run. And so the pass rush really wasn't there to create that power. But he's still functionally strong, still one of the strongest, I think, players in football overall. So as long as that's there, he'll be good for this team.
All right, who's next?
Connor Hayward. We'll see how he gets used under Arthur Smith's system. Will he work some fullback? I mean, he's probably going to line up all over the place in camp. If I had to guess, he's going to do slot stuff out wide off, fullback. I mean, he should be really a chess piece for this offense.
I think the biggest limitation with him is that size and the blocking ability, especially when attached to the line of scrimmage. You're asking him to do things that you're asking him to get defeated at, especially going up against some of these base 4-3 defensive ends and all. Saw the effort on the move on some of that split zone stuff and the cut ability. He knows what to do in that aspect of his blocking when not attached to the line of scrimmage and used on the move. I think that's adequate enough what he gives you in that phase. Obviously, once again, I think when you attach him to the line of scrimmage and you ask him to block, you get what you get in that phase of his game. He did have a couple of drops last season. It was a little bit surprising. Normally I think that's just was one off in a couple of those situations. He's normally a very sure-handed guy. I think you have to do a lot of fun things with him, even out of the backfield. If you were lining him up as a fullback, utilize him in the passing game. I envision him catching anywhere between 15 and 20 passes. I think that's realistic with him. I think he can split them out. I think you can have a lot of fun with him. I think you can do some things in the red zone. And then on special teams, would like to see him output a little bit better in special teams.
Yeah, but he was a four-phase guy. I mean, he'll be one of the core players, assuming he makes the roster, which maybe I'm a little lower on the chances of that, but that's getting in the weeds. He should make the team. It's certainly far more likely than not. He's kind of the Nick Herbig of the offense, where he's athletic, high energy, hard worker, can offer a lot for the team. So we'll see how he gets used. Yeah, I think he can catch 2-3 touchdowns. I think Arthur Smith will put him to use, put all these tight ends to use, and they're all kind of going to catch 2 to 4 touchdowns basically. But, just want to see what he's not going to really have a defined role, but just kind of what is the best fit for him. I do think he'll get a ton of plays that Y off in Smith's zone-based scheme. That's going to be his ticket to helping out in the run game.
Will he exceed 20 receptions?
It's so tough.
Is that bullish? Too bullish?
It's a good over-under to put on, I think. I mean, he had, how many did he have last year? His stats kind of went down a little bit last year, but what did he have last year? He had 23 receptions. Like the receptions went up, the yards per catch went way down, and he did not have a touchdown. Yeah, if he had 23 last year, it's hard to see him not get at least that many this year. He'd probably catch a bunch of stuff in the flat off those boots, which is kind of what he did in 2023. Yeah, I think he'll do at least 20.
Okay. All right.
Although, Freiermuth did get hurt. I'll also say he's around 20, a little above.
I think that's a good over-under on him is 20 receptions overall, and hopefully have a little bit more yards per catch with that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Really didn't use him vertically last year, and they used him a little bit more as a rookie, and he's got some seam stretching ability that could be fun to play with.
All right, who's last? Alex Highsmith?
Yep, we mentioned him. I don't have a whole lot to add here. Double-digit sacks would be nice. Countering the counters will be important. Only thing I would mention new on him is he going to be your Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee? Because Cam Hayward no longer can be this team's nominee. Once you win the award once, you can't win it again. And so he cannot be nominated again. Highsmith's done some great community work. I think he's helped out recently with some of the fires affecting some of the homeless shelters in the Pittsburgh area. We wrote about that. So really quality person. And I would not be surprised if he was his team's Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't even thought about that aspect of it. When are those named?
It's late in the year. Is it December? Let's see. Steelers. We're searching here in real time. Right. It's later in the season, maybe December. Nominated so much. Let's see. December 5th. 2023 was his nomination. I think teams do it kind of not all at the same date, but it should be late November, early December.
Okay. Yeah, he's good a candidate as any, for sure. Good kid.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Dave, anything else here to talk about today?
I think we got through everything that we wanted to discuss on this Friday.
All right, let's get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's see here. Let's start one from Rob Enos. Writes in, Rob in SoCal. Love the show. Keep up the great work during this slow time of year. I think you both should take a look, if you have not already, at Deon Walker of Kentucky. He is the defensive tackle. He is the defensive tackle of the Steelers' future. I know it's way too early, but I think it's worth your time to look at some of his tape. If you've seen some of the tape already, what are your thoughts on the player? By the way, I'm certain he will meet all the requirements the Steelers look for. I do not know anything about Deon Walker. What do you know about Deon Walker, if anything?
Hardly anything more. I think he was on that PFF list of 10 defensive linemen to watch when I wrote about Mills from Notre Dame, but Walker's a big guy. He's listed 6'6", 348, so a hefty individual there. He's got some starting experience. Yeah, we'll have to dig into him either throughout the season or more likely after the year.
Boy, a lot of weight on him, right? So he most definitely would be a defensive nose tackle, right?
Yeah, and with Benton, I think Pittsburgh's pretty committed to playing Benton at the nose. I don't know if Walker's going to really be the fit, but interesting name. We'll certainly keep our eyes on him.
All right, let's go to Bill Ewan, looks like, in Columbus, Ohio. Love the podcast, guys, and love the Depot. First-time emailer. Another first-time emailer. All right.
Nice.
We'll get a couple of those. Welcome, Bill. He says he's been thinking about the Justin Fields contract extension. How about a 2-year extension for $25 million, $10 million in 2025 and $15 million in 2026. Expensive backup if he doesn't take over, cheap starter if he does. Mitigates risk on both sides and gives him at least this year and next to show he is the guy. At the end of this proposed contract, he'll only be 27 and ready to cash in, lead us to a nut for another 8 years if it works. If not, he has made some money, ready to go to career backup role. I don't know. That's first and foremost, let's look at it this way. He says a 2-year extension running through 2026 for $10 million in 2025 and 2026. I will tell you this: it would be hard for Justin Fields, I think, to turn down such a contract, right?
I don't know. I think he should want to see things play out.
Yeah, but that's oof. I mean, I understand. Justin Fields is what Alex's whole pushback has been through every conversation we've had about a potential Justin Fields contract extension is got to be worth his while to lock himself up, especially past next year. You know.
Right. Because what if Russell Wilson has a great year in Pittsburgh's like, we got to re-sign this guy. And then Fields has now just cemented himself as the backup. Yes, he wants to get paid, but he also wants to play. He's a competitor. He's been a starter for most of his NFL career. He just want to just sit on the bench and be the wildcat guy running quarterback power on 3rd and 2.
Right. But just looking at where he's at right now and thinking that, okay, barring Russell Wilson getting injured or falling on his face, what is the likelihood, what is the percentage of chance that Fields gets significant playing time in 2024?
Yeah, I get your point. It's not great. He's the backup.
I'm looking at this at the money that Bill's laying out here and how my thought would be, boy, that would be, if I'm his agent, that'd be hard for me. Now, look, here's the thing. How much of this is guaranteed, Bill? Because if you're looking at this, if you're paying him $10 million in 2025 and $15 million in 2026, how much are you paying him in 2024 to sign that deal, and how much of it's fully guaranteed? You're not going to guarantee any of that 2025 or 2026 money, and plus, if you're talking about if that's his numbers if money's escalating that way, 10 million 25 and 25 and 15 million 2026, what are you giving him to sign? Like 12 million? How much is his first year take going to be? 10 to 12 million max. And then that's the only thing that's fully guaranteed in the deal.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of variables there that we could go down the rabbit hole about. I mean, I know the reason why Fields should, or at least could, consider an extension now is because, as you said, he might be the backup the entire year. He might barely play. And then what's his market value going to be next year? And that's valid. To that, I would say, though, look at Mitch Trubisky. How did Mitch Trubisky go from being the backup that year in Buffalo, his first stint, to signing a pretty decent deal with Pittsburgh that offseason? Well, he was the backup. Everyone loves the backup quarterback. The organization, the Bills, said great things about him, how much he helped Josh Allen and ran scout team and all those kinds of things. And they kind of rebuilt him from the narrative. And that could happen with Fields as well in Pittsburgh. Oh, he did such a great job. And Mike Tomlin loved him. And Tomlin has the highest recommendation about Justin Fields to all these teams. And maybe with a worse quarterback class in next year's draft, which is the projection right now. I know that's tentative, but that is the projection. I mean, I think there's still a play for Fields to make money next year, even if he's the backup the entire 2024 season.
Right. And really looking at this just the way he's throwing out numbers, and I know that's all Bill's doing here, that sure seems a little rich for right now.
Yeah, but I mean, quarterbacks get paid. I mean, even the backups are getting expensive. And listen, even if Fields is the starter and not a very good one, those guys still get paid a ton of money. I mean, what is the going rate for like a lower end starting quarterback? Geno Smith's making $25 million. I mean, that's kind of the floor if you're a starter in any capacity. What did Gardner Minshew get to kind of compete for that job and with the Raiders this year with O'Connell?
I don't
What
have
was
it
his
pulled
deal?
up.
2 years, 25 million. So he's
Okay.
getting 12 and a half per year.
Yeah, but he has had a moderate success though.
Yeah, about the same as Fields, probably some ups and downs. I mean, different paths. Obviously, Minshew was kind of more the gritty, scrappy backup type, not the first round guy. But point is, I mean, I think Fields could get a starting job next year and still get paid.
If and it's a big if, they do end up doing something with Fields this offseason, I envision it something being getting them locked up for just 2025 at like $7 million or something.
Yeah, I mean, at least get a quarterback under contract for next year's Pittsburgh's goal. And listen, I've been wrong about quarterback contract stuff before. I was wrong on Trubisky quite a bit in terms of, would he not get an extension and those kinds of things. So I don't know. Pittsburgh wants to do it, more power to him. I just struggle to see Fields' perspective of the real incentive to do so.
Agreed. All right, made it through the couple of new emails that we have in there since the last show. So it'd be a good time to put a wrap on this one here.
Another 90 minutes, Dave. I think we spit in the eye of the off season and say we can find things to talk about. We can still make a 90-minute show, whether it's week 3 or July 5th. And so good job by both of us.
All right. It is July 5th. Do you still have all 21 of your digits?
21. Okay. Some DNA chromosome issues to talk about.
All right. We will be back on, barring something spectacular happening, on Tuesday of next week.
We live stream Monday for anyone
live stream
as well.
Monday night on Alex Kozora's YouTube channel. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version, same thing. Upper right navigational bar, hit the ad-free, follow the directions that way for 1 year worth of ad-free of SteelersDepot.com. So until Tuesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.